René Descartes for free will, Friedrich Nietzsche against it, Jean-Paul Sartre for it, Arthur Schopenhauer against it. There are hundreds of interesting arguments for and against free will made by some of the most well-known philosophers in history. There have even been attempts to prove scientifically whether or not we have such a thing as free will. My goal today is to present an uncontestable yet basic and understandable logic that should work to convince you against such an idea as free will. When we are born, we are a newly structured being with every cell in our body following the instructions encrypted in our genetics, or nature, where I define nature as the innate biological factors that influence human behavior, traits, and development. At this point, our nature is all we are. It defines the way our mind works, and thus it is particularly easy to see that we cannot act of our own discretion. Then from there, it's natural to extend this idea to the rest of our life, that in some way or another, our nature influences the way our minds work, and thus the decisions we make. I label this basic idea premise 1. We do not choose our nature, and our nature influences our decisions. As each individual grows up, they take in information from the 5 senses that their bodies are equipped to detect: hearing, touching, seeing, tasting, and smelling their environments. Our brains, structured initially solely based on our genetics or nature, change according to experience or nurture, where I define nurture as the environmental factors that influence human behavior, traits, and development. This nurture is really just information that our body takes in, which gets very quickly stored as short-term memories and eventually long-term memories to be referred to at any time. Now, it is this information that makes up the neural network of our minds. Thus, not only does this input change us in the form of new information added to our mind, but I'll go so far as to say that it becomes a part of us. We are literally a network of information derived from outside of our bodies. I'll label this idea premise 2. We do not choose our experiences in life, and our experiences influence our decisions. Now, these aren't very intuitive ideas, in the sense that normally we don't think about making decisions in this way. I think this is primarily because we experience our decisions being made, so it elusively feels as if we were in complete control of making that decision. But really, that decision is made solely by forces outside of our control, so all we are in a decision-making process is an aware being watching the forces of nature culminate before our eyes. At any moment in time, if you react in a certain way to something, it is really because the network of dynamically connected information that is your brain reacts this way to it, not exactly your aware self. Your brain is a network of connected information, connected concepts, whose structure and functioning is governed by nature, and whose contents is governed by nurture. In particular, at any moment if you have a thought, perhaps an argument against what I'm saying right now, I am arguing that that thought is the result of your brain taking in what I'm saying through your senses, storing it into short-term memory, thereby adding it to the network of information that is your brain, which is what it is initially due to its genetics and experiences, the nature and the nurture of its past, and like a complex input-output machine forms a thought. Notice the key points here. The way the brain acts is determined completely by its genetics and its inputted information over its lifetime. Every decision a person makes is made dependent on these factors. Who a person is dependent on these factors. But these are things that no person could have chosen for themselves. There is no person who authored themselves. Every single aware being in existence has been forcibly formed in this universe by a ridiculous feat of coincidence and has had no other choice but to be fed the experience of their environment as they are pushed and pulled around by the forces of physics and biology, while at the same time being shaped by these forces and reacting to them according to the very genetics and past experiences that these forces equip them with. Premise 3. All decisions are results of our genetics and experiences, neither of which do we choose for ourselves. We do not make decisions of our own discretion. We do not have free will. We are merely spectators to the life that the universe coincidentally led us to having. No person can author themselves. They are simply a culmination of everything preceding them. We are barely different from the molecules that compose the device that you're watching this video on right now. The only difference is that we are aware of our existence. Now, this all leads to some very unsettling questions, such as whether or not a mass murderer should be punished for what they've done, since they never really had a say in becoming that mass murderer to begin with. There was once a mass murderer in Universe R598 named Jerry Smith. Now, Mr. Smith was found to have a tumor in his brain after being captured, and it was determined that that tumor was in such a part of his brain to cause these illicit actions. Now, once everyone found out about this, they took pity on Mr. Smith for being dealt such a shit card in his game of life. Suddenly, it seemed that he was forced against his will to commit these actions due to this brain tumor. So there Mr. Smith was in this courtroom waiting to be given his sentence as everyone argued for the best course of action. Barging in was Rick Sanchez of Universe C-137, who began to argue that the brain operates in such a way that in the same way that this brain tumor could be removed to get rid of these murderous tendencies, certain parts of the brain could be altered to change behavior in general. Rick Sanchez, being the genius he is, took 5 seconds to tell his nanobots to remove the tumor in Jerry's brain, and then being the wise ass that he is, took the time to alter all of the other prisoners' minds to remove any evil intentions in them, just to prove his point. The physical structure of the brain largely controls a person's actions. That physical structure is what it is due to a person's nature and nurture. If we as a civilization were to understand that who a person is due to factors outside of their control, there are immediately more just solutions than the simple outright imprisonment that is typically sentenced today. Accepting these ideas and not letting them affect your life outside of them is important. There were evidently many philosophers who let their ideas drive them crazy, and for what? We're alive, aren't we? In this incredibly interesting universe governed by laws that for some reason humans can understand. It didn't have to be that way. Let's be grateful of the experience we have and go our separate ways. I hope you found all of this interesting. Stay curious, and goodbye.